I'm here today to discuss a question that I receive very frequently, and that's going to be, what are some of my favorite spooky, dark, haunted themed candles? It's a loaded question because Halloween is my favorite. However, I'm not talking about Halloween exclusively here. I'm talking about year-round fragrances that can help set the bone-chilling stage in the comfort of your own home. I went through my entire collection and I picked out 13 fragrances that will be sure to evoke the spirits, the ghosts, the ghouls in your home. Welcome everybody to the Candle Enthusiast. I am your host, Shane Carlson, and these are my top 13 haunted fragrances. First candle is going to be Yankee Candle's Haunted Hollow. This was a 2017 release. It was only available in 2017, at least in the candle form. And those of you who are familiar with this candle know of its spooky potential. This is a departure from a typical autumnal, lush, fresh fallen leaves on the forest floor type of fragrance. There's nothing warm and cozy about this. This is cold. This is dark. This is haunting. This candle, very, very strong in its approach. Immediately, it's recognizable. Sweet, sticky, sappy pine trees walking underneath tall trees in the forest, especially those trees that drop their needles, and you're crackling along, stepping on these pine needles and pine cones and hearing that crunch, and all of the sticky goodness that has sapped out of that tree is beneath your feet. That is the major player here. It's like stepping up to a dark forest, but it is citrusy. It does have a significant amount of fruitiness, so there is a refreshing quality to it as well. There is also a mintiness, maybe a natural mintiness or menthol quality from the pine. You know, if you smell blue spruce trees, they have a crisp, clean quality to them, and that is precisely what's going on here. We perhaps have a little bit of spice, a little bit of incense, maybe a little bit of charcoal. Think about that fresh split pine you throw into the fireplace, and it gets lightly roasted by the flames. So if there's anything I truly need to express about this candle, is that it's an exceptional example of an outdoor candle. This won't necessarily transport you into a warm, cozy environment. This is going to kick you outside into that dark, cold, dank, black forest where all of the spooky things lie. This is a haunted candle. Is it easy to find? Nope. It certainly has my recommendation. Let's move on to candle number 2. Haunted Hollow is going to be hard to find, but one that shouldn't be nearly as hard to find or as expensive to acquire if purchasing online from another seller is Yankee Candle's Witch's Brew. It has been a staple of the Yankee Candle Halloween collection as early as the early 1990s. There's a few things that need to be said about this candle. If you like patchouli, great. If you don't, you might just want to pass this one up. I was a young kid the first time I burned this candle. To me, it was so exotic and foreign. It was so peculiar and strange, but yet somehow vaguely familiar. So it had this mystique, it had this mystery about it, and it's cemented itself in my brain. It's an association that I have with Halloween or anything spooky. It's smoky, it's spicy, it's earthy. To me, when I smell it, there's a very distinct Coca-Cola classic tinge that sweetens it all up. The sweetness puts you into a trance. It pulls you in. It makes this experience so fulfilling. Witch's Brew will always have my stamp of approval, but if you're not familiar with this candle, what you really need to know is patchouli. This is a patchouli forward. It's not even a patchouli forward candle. This is a patchouli candle with other things going on. So if patchouli is something that you enjoy, or perhaps something you're not overly familiar with, then I highly recommend this. Yankee Candle's Witch's Brew. In my mind, a classic if there ever was one. This one coming up is certainly one that I recommend all of the time to almost anyone. And that's going to be because not only of its authenticity, but its unquestionable ability to transport you to the holy ground, or the burial ground, or the cemetery. Just imagine on a cold autumn day being face forward on the ground, in the dirt, in the soil, embracing that, smelling the dirt, smelling the wet grass, smelling the mulch and all of the vegetation. What does it smell like? It smells like dirt, it smells like grass, it smells like wood, and yet it's so pretty. This candle could be this aromatic story of what it would smell like to be buried alive. That's scary stuff. But imagine for a moment being buried alive, being in that old wooden casket, like Nosferatu style casket here, wooden box, and being lowered into the ground, smelling the freshly sawed and hammered wood with the earthiness around you, the coldness around you, the smell of wet stone around you. And as that moisture, that rainwater seeps in to your final resting place, we can smell the dewiness of an early morning or a late evening during sunset in autumn. This is a beautiful candle, but when you really think about it, when you really let yourself be immersed into this candle, it's spooky, it's transportive, and it's incredibly authentic. Witch City Wicks Holy Ground always has my highest of recommendations. Next candle, Winter Guardian by Washington Wicks. And I don't believe this candle is in production any longer, but this was gifted to me long ago by the proprietor, Nikki, and it's stayed on my shelf because how I viscerally responded to this candle when I smelled it. On the label, we have this gargoyle perched on its ledge in front of this ornate window, what looks like a cathedral. There's snow, there's ice. Oh man, but there's just something that is so on point, bridging the aroma with the label. This smells like chimney smoke. This smells like wood. A torch that we would see in medieval times hanging up on a stone wall. I feel like I am smelling snow. I feel like I can smell that frozen, icy stone. I can smell the crisp air of that winter night. Very thought-provoking candle here. Now, I don't think this candle is in production any longer, but maybe with a little bit of persuasion, we can get Washington Wicks to make a new batch of this candle. I will certainly be buying some if they do. Mummy's Tomb by Lunar Light Company. This really captures the charm of the 1930s Boris Karloff Universal Studios The Mummy film. This somehow brings the film to life. It doesn't feel like National Geographic. This feels like Hollywood. Whereas the previous candles were outdoor candles primarily, this is going to be immersive in the world of inside. We really feel like we are surrounded by an interior situation here. This smells old. This smells familiar. Something mystical is going on. Somewhere there's a plume of purple and maybe some burgundy smoke. There's incense burning. There's dried herbs and florals laid out on golden plates. There's something ceremonial happening inside of this candle. Resinous fragrances, resin, dark amber, cedar wood, frankincense, and myrrh. So if you think about that old church when they're burning that incense, that's kind of bringing this ceremonial, spiritual side to this candle. It's what's bringing it to the forefront, but it's also making it pretty and exotic and, dare I say, a little bit sexy and provocative. It's not necessarily overly smoky, but it does have that resin sweetness, which for me always kind of puts me in a specific kind of environment, like Salem, Massachusetts, or Sleepy Hollow, New York, or a fortune teller's parlor. It has the feeling of being mystical and magical once we get those components going. If you love universal monsters, the Wolfman, the Invisible Man, Creature from the Black Lagoon, Dracula, and the Mummy, this is a candle that you should look out for. Lunar Light Company's Mummy's Tomb. This next candle has really grown on me. It's called Witching Hour by Absinthe-Minded Wicks. And on the label we have this silhouetted witch and cat flying over the moon. In many ways this smells like a haunted house, perhaps an abandoned house in the woods. We go inside and we smell the decrepit floorboards, the saturated wood, decades and decades of weathering and erosion of this house. And yet it's still a little bit spicy. It's still a little bit sweet and creamy. It's like walking into that abandoned house and walking in the kitchen and smelling the smells that once exuded from that kitchen space. This is rich in its components. The fragrance notes are very straightforward, but it shows you when they're mixed right how much can be achieved. Great for Halloween, but trust me, great for any spooky occasion. Absinthe-Minded Wicks, The Witching Hour. We have a fragrance here by Burke and Hare Company. This one entitled The Magician. So right from the bat, with the name, you already have my attention. The idea of a fortune teller's parlor, or the smell of a museum, it has a richness of different times, and everything in the room is opulent, from the furniture to the actual physical structure of the wood of the room. But where this one really diverts from just a typical resinous Salem, Massachusetts-like boutique parlor is its floral notes. It's a very pretty, bright floral with the smell of the resin and the woods and the softness. This really puts you into that environment of being in that fortune teller's parlor. Love potion number 9, tapestries and tassels and satin and pillows and all of that goodness, and still maintaining that quality of mystique and mystic. I like that it's a challenge to decipher what this smells like, because that's what really gets you lost into the candle. Burke and Hare Company, The Magician. We're probably all familiar with Village Candle, and although this particular candle Forbidden Forest looks very pretty. It looks like a fantasy. It looks like there should be fairies and unicorns prancing around according to this label. But if you kind of put that aside when you smell this candle, you'll notice right away this goes into darker territory. Once again, we are outside, but we're not in any kind of environment that we've smelled so far in this video. This is a forest. This is a forbidden forest, but it's not as bright and pretty as it appears on this label. Big time woodiness, massive. Doesn't smell like furniture. This doesn't smell like Home Depot. This smells like wood chips. All of the hardwood chips, for those of you who smoke meats, aromatic wood chips like cherry or mesquite. Can't help but think of a mossy greenness. Very fertile smelling moss. Like we can almost smell the moisture on the surface or in the air. And there's a fruitiness here, but not a typical citrusy fruitiness that we might get from a pine tree. We're going more into the berries. Dehydrated strawberry. For me, it's all about cherry, and a specific kind of cherry, almost like a medicinal cherry cough drop. So in many ways, same kind of candle as Yankee Candle's Haunted Hollow, but a completely different execution. Two forests, but two far different locations. Village Candle's Forbidden Forest. Moving back to Yankee Candle for a minute, I pulled one from my shelf that I thought was certainly worth talking about. This is a Yankee Candle despite the very different formatting of vessels. Incense Antique. This does have that old library, old lounge, a majestic parlor. This smells very much like a high-end antique shop. Your grandpa's smoking pipe. If you smell the inside of the bowl, there's that smell of residual smoke. You know, smoke was once here, and the sweetness of the residual flavored tobacco. Smoky, tobacco, and woody, and all of it antiqued, aged. When it comes to haunted candles, spooky concepts, well, you need to have something that is elegantly gothic in a less obvious way. What it would be like to sit in a chair next to Edgar Allan Poe as he was reading a passage from something that he's writing, being in an environment that's candlelit. This is one of the better examples of Yankee Candle creating a luxury fragrance. Incense Antique by Yankee Candle. Because we're talking about teak, we might as well move on to this next candle that is by and large one of my favorite candles of all time. It's been with me for so many years. I just seem to like it more and more as the years go on. And that's going to be Votivo's Teak number 37A. One of the ways I went about describing it that I still enjoy is I coined this candle Johnny Depp's closet. That's right, Johnny Depp's. What would Johnny Depp's closet smell like? And what I mean by that is think about all of the different roles in cinema that he's played over the years. Edward Scissorhands, Jack Sparrow, Willy Wonka, Ichabod Crane. Yes, Tim Burton, but also Tim Burton works with costume designer Colleen Atwood, a multi-time Oscar winner designer. It feels like fabric, a closet that's filled with memories and adventures and experiences. A masculine smell, but not timid, to have feminine qualities, bright floral notes, deeply musky. This is what I would imagine Johnny Depp's closet smelling like, and it can bring the elegance to any spooky, haunted situation. Now, the next candle is something we're not going to be able to find in stores. We're not going to be able to go on the internet and find this candle, at least not easily. I came across it in a small boutique in New England, Sleepy Hollow, French vanilla. Although this candle smells like French vanilla, oh man, there's so many other things going on. It's an old candle. I can tell that it's old, and I just don't know how to say it. It smells like if you had a box of 15-year-old vanilla cigars, vanilla flavored cigars. Everything that's coming from inside, the tobacco, the fruitiness of the tobacco, the sweet golden honey from the tobacco, but also the cedar wood from the box itself, and age. It has age to it. The fireplace, the tobacco smoke, the wooden notes. If by chance you come across a candle in a thrift store or some boutique in New England by the name of Sleepy Hollow French Vanilla, pick it up and purchase it, or at least give it a sniff, because to me, it definitely qualifies as a spooky candle. Homeworks by Harry Slacken. This candle called Autumn Bonfire. And really, I could give a poetic description of this candle, but all that needs to be said is in the title itself. Think about an autumn fire, bonfire, and what that emotionally does to you, where it brings you. This candle will help feed that fire and expand on that concept. It takes some liberties to make it probably prettier than it would smell like in real life, especially in the foliage. This doesn't smell like wet leaves burning out in the field. This smells like really pretty, floral, fragrant, tea leaf-like foliage. We often see foliage portrayed in this manner. A cedar wood note here that really creates a wonderful contrast, a contrast that we're all familiar with. It doesn't take much of a stretch to bring this to a campfire situation. Ghost stories, fire, friends, spiced hot caramel apple cider, scary stories to tell in the dark, Afraid of the Dark, Nickelodeon, nostalgia-driven candle here. Autumn Bonfire by Homeworks, a product produced by Harry Slacken. It would be very hard for me to have left this candle off the list. This is one of their staples, if not their staple candle. It's called simply Salem. It also has maintained a nickname of October Forever, and I think that's a great alternate name for this candle, or a great way to describe it, because where this candle excels is in its authentic representation and transportation to Salem in the autumn. If you've ever wanted to walk the stone streets of Salem, Massachusetts during the fall, during the Halloween season, if you ever wanted to walk around the old burial sites in Salem, if you ever wanted to stop off at a vendor at the corner of the street to buy a cup of hot mulled apple cider, this wraps up the whole experience in a candle in such a beautiful way. Crushed autumn leaves, it smells resinous, it smells fruity. I believe there are some berry notes in here, but what really propels me is the apple, and it's not identifiable. You don't smell this and necessarily think apple right away, but there's this contrast of earthy forest floor and juicy apple that, man, it just hits the nail on the head. It really makes me think of Salem, because I have spent time in Salem in October and the Halloween season, and you cannot escape the smells of apple cider floating through the air, or farm stands, right? It's just the smell of harvest in the air. When I smell this candle, I am immediately triggered to the first time I ever smelled this candle. It just has that power. So if you daydream about Salem, I highly recommend that you check out this scent, Salem by Witch City Wicks. Last on the list, but certainly not the least, most of you were probably waiting for me to talk about this candle. This candle and I have such a history. Kringle Candles, Witch's Cauldron. This is not an obvious winner by no stretch of the imagination. This is a type of candle that does need to grow on you, I believe.
Man. All right, so let's just get it out in the open right from the get-go. Firewood, smoke. Can you deal with that?
And once you have the right images in your head, and once you can really wrap your mind around the concept here, it really comes to life. I've said smoky, I've said fireplace, I've said campfire before in this video, but I really mean it now. This smells like an extinguished campfire. It has a wet smoke, hickory smoke, mesquite smoke, and a lot of people that they're just not going to handle that. They're going to be like, whoa, that's too aggressive for me. That's too bombastic, and I get it. I understand. But give it a chance. Look a little bit deeper. There's a very approachable side to this candle. There's some spices, but there's a big cherry note that really comes through for me. And although that cherry note is not necessarily listed in the fragrance notes of this candle, I can't help but smell this cherry. And it's a very specific kind of cherry. It's the cherry that we would smell if we smelled a mug of Dr. Pepper soda. It's that high tinge of acidity, that bright Bing cherry or black cherry, slightly underripe perhaps. You have that campfire and you put it out by dumping liters and liters of Dr. Pepper on it. Imagine what that would smell like. All while being in the environment of a forest outside at night, in the cold, in the dark. It is autumnal, that is for sure. It is witchy, that is definitely for sure. And it is a spooky classic when it comes to haunted candles. It's something that I highly, highly recommend. So that's gonna do it. 13 candles, all great options if you ask me to enhance your spooky evening. Please share any comments in the section down below that you might have, any questions that you might have. Is there anything that I forgot to mention? Is there anything that you would like to add? Please feel free to leave that. I'll be seeing you folks soon, but until then, remember to always live enthusiastically. We'll see you next time.